welcome. Thank you for joining me in Dear Mr. Jefferson, Conversations with Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Mr. Madison and I were honored to visit the students of WordWorks in Lynchburg, Virginia, while on our way to Poplar Forest, my retreat and plantation located but a few miles southeast of Lynchburg. Today, Poplar Forest is a National Historic Landmark, which you can visit and tour. Here, the children ask Mr. Madison and I about the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and how the nation has changed since we were elected president.
Well, I am delighted to welcome everyone here this afternoon. I think you all know who I am, do you not?
Thomas Jefferson.
Thank you. And my good friend?
Mr. James Madison.
I do. Good to see you all today. Such animated faces. Are you excited today?
Yes.
The heat is not bothering you at all?
No.
Oh, very good. We should have a lively discussion today.
In fact, our discussion, I would say more than anything else, is generally about what makes us happy and free. If there's one thing our Declaration of American Independence states, it is that man has a right to be happy and free. That is what it says, not only for us as Americans, but for whom else? Who else do you think?
For everybody.
Everyone. Absolutely.
And I was engaged in helping to write a document called the Constitution. You may see it from time to time. The Constitution is a document that creates a government that enables us to carry out the principles of the Declaration of Independence. It's one thing to say what we would like to have in the world, and it's another thing to put into action those ideas, to make them work for people in a way that everyone will accept. And that is what the Constitution seeks to do.
Our Constitution is what creates our government. Not necessarily the government of every state, such as the state of Virginia or the state of North Carolina or Maryland, but our Constitution represents all of the states in our nation and protects our citizen body, that protects every American in no matter which state they may live. It protects an American who lives in Massachusetts, protects an American who lives here in Virginia, protects an American who lives in the Carolinas and Georgia. So what we would like to do here today with all of you is to hear any questions that you might have about our Declaration of American Independence, about the Constitution, or other subjects that you would like to bring up with us relevant to happiness and freedom.
It is also important for us to look at these situations. When the Declaration of Independence was written before the American Revolution, we didn't know what was going to happen when we declared independence. We didn't know whether the revolution or war would be successful, and even when it was successful, and we went to living one another after England was cast out of the American colonies and we became American states, then the idea of creating a set of rules for the country became very important. And these rules came by people thinking about them. What is their situation? Where are they coming from? What do they wish to do? What do they want to be protected from other people? And so today, actually, every generation has to look at these same questions to see whether the Constitution and the government they have are carrying out what people would like the government to do. And we are just as much starting today with these ideas as so many of us and our colleagues did so many years ago. And that is why your opinions, that is why your likes and dislikes and your thoughts become just as important as those people who started the Declaration of Independence and the people who wrote the Constitution. Your ideas really are the current ways of looking at old questions. And every generation has to look at these questions effectively to stay free and happy.
Do you know what I consider to be the most important reason that what you have to say and the questions you raise are so important today, perhaps more than they were important when Mr. Madison and I was your age? What do you think is the most important reason why we should continue to question our Constitution, why we should continue to question our nation, why we should continue to question happiness and freedom? What do you think is the most important? Why? Why is it important for you? What do you think? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Freedom of the press. Why is that more important today? Any idea? Yes. Why do you think? Freedom of the press is so very important for you all, perhaps more than it was for Mr. Madison and I when we were young. Yes, what do you think?
Because, like, you have free things you can do.
We have many more, you all have many more free things that you can do than Mr. Madison and I ever had. And why do you think that's so important when you think of many, many free things? Because there are many, many more what than Mr. Madison?
Social malls.
More media, social media? We do not know what a mall is, but what might that be?
Freedom of religion.
Freedom for religion? Are there many more religions in America now than there were when Mr. Madison and I were here? Absolutely, from what we have been told. How about more what? More than Mr. Madison and I have known. In fact, we see it right here at this table. More
Cultures.
More cultures, different cultures that are coming to America now. And with more media, more malls, whatever that may be, more cultures, there are obviously more
Freedom. Technology.
with technologies and science and more freedoms, but more who? More who allows all people. They're just more people than Mr. Madison and I have ever known.
Malls? Okay, malls are like when you go shopping.
Malls are when you go shopping. What a quaint term.
And get your nails done.
Do you know what a maul is to me? A maul is a big hammer that you hammer something down with. It's a big hammer.
And then, of course, there's a Pall Mall, and that is the long avenue in London, England, at the end of which is a palace. So a mall can be an avenue. Do we have any palaces in our nation?
No.
No. We have houses of the people, not palaces, as we knew when we were owned by Great Britain. What else makes it more necessary for you to ask questions about happiness and freedom? We've had the media and technology, more people, more malls. What's something else?
And remember, there are no right answers here. These are the questions we were kind of asking ourselves in 1787. There's no one who has a right answer. What we're looking for are different ways of looking at the same questions, but coming up with different answers. And some answers are good and some answers are bad, but they all lead us to a better understanding of the question. So don't think there's a right answer we're looking for here.
Did you ever meet Molly Pitcher?
Did I ever meet Molly Pitcher? Do you mean one of the heroines of our American Revolution, a woman who went to battle? I believe, was she not from Massachusetts?
New Jersey.
New Jersey, I remember now. No, I never met her. I heard many, many stories about her and how valiant she was. Imagine a woman going to do battle and to fire cannons at an enemy. Did you ever meet her, Mr. Madison?
I did not, but I went to College of New Jersey in Princeton, and we heard about her there, and I believe she served at Trenton, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was the Battle of Monmouth, I don't know. Interesting woman, interesting woman.
Yes, Ashley.
How old were you when you wrote the Declaration of Independence?
Well, I never will forget how old I was. You know why? Because there were many older people there in the Continental Congress, one of the eldest was Benjamin Franklin. I was 33 years old when I wrote the Declaration of American Independence. Dr. Franklin was nearly 30 years older than me.
And how old, much older is 33 than your age?
60.
What is your age now?
10.
10. What's 10 from 33? Do you know? It's 23. He was 23 years older than you are right now when he wrote the Declaration.
My.
Why did you want to write the Declaration of Independence?
Why did I want to write it? You know, actually, I was invited to write it. I was chosen to write our Declaration of American Independence. I was one of a committee of 5 men who were created, a committee by President John Hancock. The other 4 gentlemen on the committee were John Adams from Massachusetts, Robert Livingston from New York, Roger Sherman from Connecticut, and I already mentioned him, Benjamin Franklin from Pennsylvania. Who do you think we thought should write the Declaration? Amongst those 5 men, who do you think we thought ought to be the person to write the Declaration?
Benjamin Franklin.
Were you going to say Benjamin Franklin too?
George Washington.
Well, he wasn't on the committee. Mr. Washington, General Washington, was at battle. He was on the field of war. But it was Benjamin Franklin. But you know, he said, I fear I'm too old, and anything else I may write is going to be torn apart. I've written too much that has been criticized. I think perhaps Mr. Jefferson ought to write it. So I was invited to write the Declaration and took up the pen. It took me 3 days to write that. Oh yes, I make mistakes like everybody else. Did you have another question?
Are you friends with George Washington?
Yes, I'm very good friends with General Washington. I hope he will consider me his friend as well. He knew my father, Peter Jefferson, when I was but a young boy. Of course, General Washington was some years older than me, 11 years older than me, but he was a surveyor when he was a young man. And so my father was a surveyor, and they would travel at times together.
Yes?
Were you ever in the war before the revolution?
Are you asking me? No. When the Revolutionary War began, I was 25 years old, and I had just been out of college for only about 4 years. I was a colonel for 3 days in Orange County. Because of the militia, the counties would choose their colonels and lieutenant colonel. And my father was chosen colonel, and I was chosen lieutenant colonel. But because my father didn't want to serve, I became colonel. But I was only colonel for about 3 or 4 days. I felt that I was too weak, and my constitution, my body was really not strong enough to go to war. So I sought to serve the cause in another way.
I was colonel of militia as well, but more than 3 days. However, I never saw battle because everyone wanted me to be a representative in the government. And so therefore they thought I could serve our nation and our cause better by being in a representative form of government rather than to be out in the field. But I still owned 3 swords. I only wore one at a time, but a colonel always was supposed to wear a sword to show his rank. You have a sword, do you not, as colonel?
I do. But one must remember that even in times of war, there are times when you have to have civil government, and you need good people to be running the civil government while other people are fighting the war. So it's a very important job. Does this gentleman have a question?
How many times did you have to actually copy the Declaration of Independence?
Well, that is a very good question. How many times did I have to copy Declaration when I was writing it, you mean? To rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it? I would venture to say at least 3 times. 3 times. You were right. Did you think 3 times? Well, 3 times. The first copy I wrote, I saw many mistakes, so I wrote a second copy, and then, of course, I had to show the other 4 men that copy, and they had ideas of their own. Now, it's important to remember, we all have different ideas, and when you're on a committee, you share your ideas. And so I took in many of their ideas and then rewrote the Declaration, and then of course the committee had to turn the Declaration over to the entire Congress. So they had their own ideas as well.
And whenever you write something, someone's going to find fault with whatever you wrote.
That's right.
And they're going to want to correct it. And sometimes the corrections are good, and sometimes the corrections are not really what you would have them to do. But as you say, when you're in a committee, when you're in a group, you have to abide by the ruling of everyone together.
This gentleman here.
Yes, this is
Where were
Sheba.
you born?
Where was I born? I was born out west in Virginia, deep in the forest. In fact, when I was born in 1743, I was at least 2.5 days ride west from Richmond. 2.5 days ride. That would mean about 60 miles west of Richmond, deep in the forest. I still refer to myself as a savage of the forest because it was so dark and deep there. The farm was called Shadwell. It had been created by my father, Peter Jefferson. So I will tell you one thing. I'm rather happy I was born out in the wilderness, out in the forest, because I could appreciate nature and all of its wonders and realize we're all born free in nature. Are the trees and the flowers and the birds born free in nature?
Yeah.
Of course they are, but so is man. So that helped me to understand that under the laws of nature, nature's God, we're born free.
And I was born in 1751. When was Mr. Jefferson born?
1743.
43. So he was 8 years older, and he's 8 years older than I am. And I was born in 1751, and my parents had a home, which we eventually called Montpelier, and it's in Orange County, Virginia. But at the time my mother was preparing for my birth, I was the oldest of the 12 children, and when I was being born, there was an epidemic going through Orange County. So they moved their way over to my mother's parents' house, and that was along the Rappahannock, east of Fredericksburg, in King George County. They called it Port Conway, and across the river, across the Rappahannock, was Port Royal. And I was born in my grandmother's house there, and they called that Belle Grove. But after the epidemic was gone, and after I was a couple of months old, parents moved back to Montpelier in Orange County, and that's where I spent my youth and grew up. It's still there, and I still live there.
I declare, did I hear you say you were one of 12 children?
I was.
Mercy.
But they didn't come immediately after me. They came over a period of time.
I know, but 12, that's a large family. I was one of 10 children. I can't imagine having 2 more siblings after you have 10.
And this young lady, do you have a question?
Why did you want to be president?
Well,
When did you want to become president?
Well, I want to ask the same thing of you, Mr. Madison. I will tell you this. It is not so much whether I want to be president or Mr. Madison may think he wants to be president. Who must be the ultimate judge? The people. The people invited me to become president. And so therefore, when you are invited to represent the people, well, you do not want to be ill-mannered. You want to show your civility and your respect for the people and agree they have placed a great honor in you to be their representative. And so I would say more than any desire that I would want to be president, and mind you, I certainly want to help all of the people. No president wants to be a bad president. They do truly want to help everyone. So I considered it indeed not only polite, but an obligation to be their representative. I know you feel
Exactly.
kind.
I feel very similar. When we organized the new country, and we declared our independence, and we wrote the Constitution as our government, there's a sense that whoever is the leader of the country is going to be subjected to people saying, oh, no, you did this wrong, and no, you did that wrong. And all of these problems arise about being the leader of the country. So nobody really wanted to be leader of the country at the time, but to be leader was an obligation. If all of you here decide that that you want him to be the president of the group, Jamil may not set out to want to become the president, but because it's your obligation, your duty, your civic duty, to do your part for the whole group, then you accept the position of president of the organization. And we become a steward. A steward is someone who takes care of something. And during my 8 years as president, I consider myself the steward of the office of the president. The office of the president was above me. I just happened to be occupying the office for 8 years. And I did it because people needed a president and they needed someone with my skills. And so I said, all right, I will be president. But I never, ever made an effort to persuade anyone to put myself forward as president. I made no effort, no campaign to become president. I was adamant not to appear like I wanted it.
There's a young lady over here. Yes, dear.
What did you do after you stopped being president?
Well, I can tell you what I have done after I was president. In fact, I could have been president for a third term. For another 4 years. I could have been president for 12 years. But a president before me, who could have been president for a third term, he could have been president for life. Do you know the president I'm? Well, John Adams would have had to follow someone else who was expected to be president his entire life. Who do you think that is? George Washington. Oh, many thought that he should be president for life. Do you know, after 8 years, 2 administrations, he said, that's enough. He said, our government is founded upon the principle of rotation in office. So he gave up, imagine this, he gave up being one of the most powerful people in the world to retire and to go back to farming. So when I was asked to stand for a third term, I was. You see, Mr. Adams was asked to stand for a second term, but he lost the election. You know who won that election?
You did?
I did. I did. And I actually did succeed in getting a second term. But when they asked me to be president another term, who do you think I wanted to imitate? Who did you think I wanted to be like? George Washington. So I turned down the invitation to be president for a third term, and I went back to farming. That's my greatest pleasure, to be simply a farmer, to cultivate the soil. Do you know what I think are the 2 most important vocations, that is, jobs that you can have in life? The 2 most important? The one is farming, the cultivation of the soil. The other is teaching, the cultivation of the mind.